All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we're going to pick up this topic of evolution after we just talked about descent with modification over time, where it matters for an individual in a population reproducing, passing on its genes, those genes becoming modified and creating new phenotypes that will eventually become different species throughout the timeline. Now we're going to talk about fossils, right? Fossils represent the greatest body of evidence for evolution. And really all they are petrified remains of once living things. The best example is dinosaurs, and perhaps the most popular, but as you can see on the slide, we can have all kinds of fossils. You can have plant fossils, insect fossils. There are fossilized remains of Neanderthals and other ancient human species. You can have fossils of seashells, which you can often find around here. I have some in my backyard because this area was once ocean. So there are two ways to date a fossil. Okay, there is the relative dating and absolute dating. All right, and if we click on this, which I'd also like you to do, it'll take you to a little bit of reading about relative dating and absolute dating. It says relative dating is the majority of the time how fossils are dated, and basically what it does is it takes a fossil's age and relates it to something that's already of a known age. And absolute dating is to determine the precise age of a rock or fossil through radiometric dating. Radiometric dating is where we're going to have to look at the actual anatomical structure, the atoms that comprise this fossil or this rock. If we go back to the slideshow, you can see I have an example here. We're not going to go too far into depth about this right now, but just know that basically the atom that is most often used for absolute dating is carbon. And that's oftentimes why you'll hear the term carbon dating, is because we look at the atom carbon and we can tell by how many neutrons are present within the nucleus of that atom, the age of that atom. Now, we're going to look at adaptation. All right, an adaptation is an inherited characteristic that actually increases an organism's chances for survival. And if you're watching the screencast, I'd like you to click on this, top 10 adaptations. And I like you kind of like you to scroll through all 10 of these and read about these adaptations. Some of them are almost miraculous seeming. So, adaptations occur within a species, right? Species evolve over time. Organisms mutate and change. Individual organisms within a species make up, within a given area of... Okay, we'll start over. Individual organisms of a species in a given area is a population. So the number of organisms of the same species living in the same geographic area capable of interbreeding with each other. So for instance, you see that there are some deer on this screen. This deer population would be a great representation of this. Or you could just think about Gettysburg, right? The humans that live in Gettysburg are the Gettysburg population because we're of the same species inhabiting the same geographic area. Now, I had mentioned that Darwin did not discover evolution. He rather discovered the mechanism of how evolution worked. This process of natural selection, where the environment is already set up in such a way that a certain set of characteristics are going to thrive best in that environment. So whatever organism has that set of characteristics is the organism that will thrive, pass on its genes, and survive the best as a species. The environment has selected those characteristics. Natural selection. On the other hand, there is something really unique when it comes to us humans. We have the ability to do something called artificial selection. This is where people, instead of nature, are going to select which organisms to get reproduced. We have done this to a large extent For example, with the wild mustard plant pictured here, with which we've interbred and genetically manipulated to the point where we've created cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, kale, all kinds of other plants from this one plant. Another amazing example is dogs, right? Every dog breed alive today is artificially selected. We as humans bred them together. The environment didn't. We forced them together to make breeds of dogs that we wanted. So this was artificial selection. Now, then you have another relationship in evolution called divergent evolution. To diverge means to spread apart or to get further apart from each other. So increased differences within a population leads to new species, right? Think back to that deer population I showed you on the slide for the definition of population. Enough interbreeding within that deer population over time, there are going to be mutations, and there is eventually going to be a mutation that is so drastic it creates a new species of deer within that population. And if that species is naturally selected by that environment, it'll pass on its characteristics and the species will grow. So divergent evolution, increased differences within a population leading to a new species. Now these differences may be the result of changes in biotic or abiotic factors. Now biotic factors mean like life factors, and abiotic factors mean non-life factors, and we'll talk about examples of both. But my example on the right is we have, the kit fox, which lives in desert environments, and then we have the Arctic fox, which is best adapted to cold environments, which we see here and here. Okay, these lines are examples of divergent evolution, and if you go backwards in a divergent evolution tree of life here, you see that life almost converges, right, to this singular fox, this singular point that is the ancestral species of all of these species of fox. Now, this process of natural selection, there are 4 stages within it, which it's as simple as that. It is the basic mechanism that drives evolution, change over time in a species. And what I'd like you to do, if you're watching this, is please take the time to read this article at the bottom that explains natural selection and how it works. And you will understand it better. It's on the Khan Academy link here. So the 4 stages of natural selection. So you have a variation in traits, which, for example, the example here, some beetles are green and some are brown. This is the same website I asked you to visit in the last screencast. And then there is differential reproduction. Since the environment can't support unlimited growth of a population, not all individuals will reproduce to their full potential. So in this example, we see green beetles get eaten by birds and survive to reproduce less than brown beetles. And now we have the heredity aspect, the genetic aspect, the DNA. The surviving brown beetles are going to produce brown baby beetles. And this trait has a genetic basis. And the end result is the more advantageous trait, brown coloration, which kept the beetle from getting eaten, becomes the color of all the beetles over time, as the environment, which the predator bird is included in, selects the brown color. All right, folks, see you in the next one for more evolution